This man rocked my world not once but twice in 2023. Once with the original graphic novel Birdking with artist Crom, and then again with the oversized original hardcover done in one, Face Kick, Carly, the cinematic style spectacle with Robert Samerlin. Please welcome to the Omniverse, Daniel Freedman.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, dude, it's a pleasure. I'm really genuinely excited just to have you on. As you well know, Carly was our number one book for last year.
Yeah, no, I was beyond flattered and continue to be flattered, and I'm actually really excited to connect with you this time, since you seem to be the one who really loved it. So it's really great to chat with you personally.
Well, you could say that. It was I think it was quite funny as we were talking about it, weren't we? I actually admitted in the review that I was supposed to be having my dinner, and I couldn't because I was like halfway through the book, and I can either eat or I can read the rest of this book, and it seemed to not do it justice to stop halfway through.
Yeah, no, that's still one of my favorite little pull quotes. I hope to put somewhere someday, but I think it was it makes eating an inconvenience. Is that what your quote was?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the book in question, and I ordered it. What I love about this is I ordered it blind. The cover was amazing. I love that whole spaghetti western feel of it. The fact that it came out in that massive library size format. I was like, okay, this clearly is something that needs my time. It was relentless and I loved it. Yeah, and then you top it off with Birdking. I think Birdking came out afterwards, didn't it?
Birdking came out like about a month after, yeah.
So that's two big ones in one year.
Yeah, I mean, Collie had been in the works for about 7 years. So Robert and I have been working on that book for a long time. And then Birdking was something that was kind of born more out of the pandemic lockdown. Crom and I both found ourselves, locked in our homes halfway across the world from each other. And ironically, COVID is what got me, both with Robert and Crom, to have these like weekly Zoom calls where we actually started just talking on the regular, through Zoom. And Birdking was kind of born out of that. We had done Raiders. Crom and I did a book called Raiders. That was our first graphic novel at Dark Horse. That came out in June of 2020, so right at the peak of insanity, and was an impossible time to release and market a book. And so we kind of just hoped for the best and let it just go out into the world. And surprisingly, Raiders, and to this day, people are continuing to find it. So we've been happy about that. But we had a great experience, and then during our little weekly COVID chats, Crom had been working on the Birdking character, just designing him for a couple of years, drawing him, kind of developing his aesthetic and his design, and then I knew he had been kind of trying to work out the story, and he eventually came to me and asked if I would want to go on that journey with him, because Raiders was such a great time, and I jumped at the opportunity, and even more so to get to do like my first actual long form story. Everything I've done has been single trade original graphic novels like Collie, 100, 150 pages, and so Birdking, by the time it's done, is going to be 500 pages. So I'm just So volume 2 is now it's done. It's off to the printer. It'll be out in November. Oh, and we are in just starting to get into volume 3 now. So
is 3 going to wrap it up?
There's going to be 4.
There's going to be 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sold.
Yeah. One a year for the next 3 years.
Wow.
And then we'll eventually get to our giant, oversized, gorgeous omnibus of the whole thing. That's what I'm waiting for personally, is the full book, and because it is written and designed to be a single story. All 4 volumes. And so I think that was kind of a tricky thing for some people picking up Birdking, was like, is this a complete story? And it was like, well, no, people were complaining that like it doesn't have an ending. And I'm like, well, it's just the beginning.
It says volume 1 on it.
Exactly. But anyway, that's coming along, and couldn't be more thrilled about getting that out to the world. Volume 2 is going to be, if you like Volume 1, I think Volume 2 is going to blow everybody away. So,
lovely.
Volume 1 was like a little bit more of a slow burn, kind of take our time getting into it. And Volume 2 is, I think, where the action like really kicks in. So,
because that's the thing, it's a vastly different feel from Carly. Is that something that's, I mean, not necessarily it's intentional that you want to separate the two, because obviously one was started considerably earlier than the other, but do you like to pick from genre? Do you like to shake it up? Just go, I've done one of those, now I'm going to do something else?
I think at any given time, I'm fairly obsessed with one subgenre or another. I think for many, many years, I was like neck deep in cyberpunk. That was just my everything. And then I moved out of cyberpunk and into kind of like post-apocalyptic stuff, and I explored that territory for a number of years. And I think the end of my post-apocalyptic fascination or interest kind of peaked with Kali.
Yeah.
And I don't really consider Kali a post-apocalyptic book. It's you could maybe call it an apocalyptic book, but it's certainly not post-apocalyptic, even though a lot of people have interpreted it that way. So yeah, I really so now I would consider myself like a fantasy writer, because most of what I'm doing is fantasy. I mean, even Kali is a fantasy because it's totally anachronistic. It doesn't sit in any time period. It has design influences from 30s to now, and so it's its own universe. And I think the best way to look at it is just as a fantasy.
That's what I really liked about it as well, is that it didn't seem to fit into anything. I mean, it almost, I know there's probably going to be a lot of comparison to stuff like Mad Max and everything, but it's inevitable, I guess. But,
and you can do a lot worse than being compared to Fury Road or Kill Bill. I mean, that's been the most, people mostly compare it to Fury Road and Kill Bill, which again, you could do a lot worse. So I think it's unique, but I can understand why people see it that way. It's a desert set. Yeah. There's vehicles, so that automatically puts you in the Mad Max territory, and it's an all-girl biker gang, and that leans towards the Kill Bill, the whatever they were called, the five. Anyway, so yeah, you can do a lot worse, but I love both those movies, so I'll take the comparison.
Too right? No, that's cool. Yeah, because that's the thing. You did say that you got your start in comics in Marvel. I mean, going back a little further, actually, thinking about it, we're going to talk about some of your collection. How did you get into comics as a medium? Was it as a child?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as a kid, one of the books, my holy grail pick here, is kind of emblematic of my childhood experience, and I won't reveal it just yet. But I remember going to a little bookstore called Walden Books. It was like a little book chain. It's gone now, as every book chain is, except the big one that's left. But I used to go to this bookstore, and they had spinner racks, and I would just hang out at the spinner racks when my dad went to get whatever he was going to get. And back then comics were cheap, that I could get 4 or 5 or 6 off the rack, and I would just pick whatever looked cool to me. And so this would be early 90s would be the era, and so Image was just starting. I almost never picked up anything from DC, I have to tell you. I picked up a ton of Marvel stuff, a lot of Image stuff, and then once I got a little bit older and started actually being able to go to the comic book shop, which the shop that I grew up at was Heidi Ho Comics in Santa Monica. And as soon as I was able to start going there in like 8th or 9th grade, that kind of like introduced me to all the foreign books and like the greater kind of span of what's out there. And after like being exposed to like Mobius and all these French guys and all this kind of more underground stuff, and even stuff like Sin City, like Frank Miller's Sin City books, like I could never go back to like
costumes.
Like X-Men again. It was just like, I guess like Marvel and DC stuff, even though I didn't pick up a lot of DC stuff, it always felt a little like PG to me, like a little bit like, and it is created for a younger, I think, audience, or at least it was then. And I mean, that was at least part of the target audience was like kids. Yeah. And so, once you get exposed to like Sin City and all this, like, I mean, I guess the short answer is like I just really like sex and violence in my books, and you don't get a lot of that in superhero stuff.
Obviously, I do want to find out what some of those earlier influences were, but what we're going to do first of all, we jump in, is go to right ahead. We're going to come into the present, and I'm going to ask you to share a current read.
Okay, current read. Let's see here. So I just picked this book up. This book came out like a year or two ago, but it's Loud. This is a trade. It's a single trade. Loud by Maria Lovett,
Uh-huh.
and she does Faithless with Azzarello now,
Oh,
and
right.
she's amazing. And so she wrote and drew. She did everything on this book. It's a one man, one woman story. I'll just read the back to you since it's facing me as I hold it up. It says, The Loud Nightclub. A latecomer stripper, a pissed-off waitress, a hitman couple, a suspension bondage performer, a pregnant teenager, a clan of vampires, a pedophile, a lesbian junkie, a divorcing middle-aged woman, a sadistic dominatrix, and many other souls in search of love, drugs, and blood converge on the hottest club in town on a night that none of them will ever forget.
So explain to me why you don't read superhero comics exactly.
Well, there's just not enough.
Not enough of all of those things.
And sadistic dominatrixes. I think it comes down to that. And if you do get the chance to pick this up, you'll see it is almost no dialogue. It's incredibly sparse on dialogue. The only dialogue is like incidental. It's like characters passing each other in the club, and the whole thing is it's similar to Kali. It's like. Everything is like beat. It's incredibly linear and decompressed, and it's like, I don't know, 80, 90 pages, and it's just one night, and all these characters kind of crossing paths in this nightclub. Mostly all just visual storytelling.
Yeah.
I think she just did an amazing job with this book, and I don't know, when she did this book, if it's an earlier work of hers or not, but yeah, just truly fantastic. And what I like about it, when there's not a lot of dialogue, you have to insert yourself into the story, and you have to do more work as a reader to put the images together and create the space and everything else. And for me, that's what creates engagement, as opposed to giant exposition boxes.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I mean, one of the things I was thinking actually when you were showing me those pages as well was almost like what the sound would be like, because it's in a club. It's got that feel, what that sounds like and how that bass can go right through you. Is that the kind of thing you think you experience when you read a comic like this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you look at it, you'll see like there's just endless sound effects, like in every panel, like boom, 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 bang, like just the drum, the bass, like of the club that's going on in the other room. And like, there's just every panel just has this like,
oh yeah, boom, boom, boom.
You're just hearing the music, and you're hearing noises, and so many actions that don't have any words are punctuated by just little sound effects, which is, something I try to do as well. So, again, I think Maria Lovett is amazing, and you should check out the book Loud.
I've seen the cover to that book while browsing. I try and keep tabs on what pretty much every company is releasing, which it seems is a lot harder than it should be right now. But Black Mask do some really interesting books. There have been a couple of their books I picked up over the years, and I think everything's been great, and I've hung on to all of it. Because there was four kids walk into a bank, which actually...
Oh, I just started reading that.
Oh, did you? I'm not going to say too much about it then, but that just got me. I loved it. And I'd read his previous book, which was We Can Never Go Home.
I actually just connected with Rosenberg, Matthew
Rosenberg,
right?
yes.
And yeah, he actually just sent me those two books to read.
Oh, so, no way.
He apparently picked up Kali and was blown away by it, and so he went and got Birdking and wrote me a nice email, and so yeah, we actually recently connected, and he just sent me his earlier works, and so I'm reading through them right now.
Oh, nice! Wow, that's pretty cool.
Because I have read his current book. What's the furthest?
What's the furthest place from here?
Yeah, I think it's a long title. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which has been really cool too. I really like the art, and yeah, I like what they're doing. So.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah, I did notice that his two earlier books were Black Mask titles as well. So
yeah,
I've actually have no relationship with Black Mask. I don't know anything about them.
I don't know a huge amount, but I don't think they release books that often. But when they do, they seem to pack a punch. But they've done some really interesting books, so I'd be really keen to pick that one up.
Yeah, definitely pick up Loud, and I'm gonna have to myself check out what else they have to offer. So
yeah, I think it's well worth it.
Yeah.
I mean, this one might be jumping back to. This one could be jumping back in time for you, but I wonder now if you could share with me a complete set.
Yes. So this does not go back to my youth. This only goes back maybe 10, 12 years, which is still a sizable amount of time. But I actually, from my current local shop owner and secret headquarters here in LA, the owner, Dave, had the full run of Grendel.
Right.
Single issue format. And so I bought that from him. And so I own... Wow. I know that there's some new Grendel stuff that just came out recently, which I don't have yet, but I think everything up until a couple of years ago I have in single issue form. It's an entire short box. I think it's close to 80 issues.
Jeez.
And I actually haven't even read all of it. I've only read maybe the first 40 issues. Because the thing about Grendel is that it's not continuous. It's like a series of miniseries.
That's right, yeah.
And each one is 4, 8, 10 issues long. And so, once you read that, it's kind of like, you feel like you're done, but now you've got 6 more miniseries that are pretty much completely unconnected except for the mask and the name. And so the like I mentioned before, I had one of these issues as a kid, and the reason I bought the entire run was to find this one issue that I had as a kid, and it's this issue. It's issue 5 of the War Child miniseries.
Signed.
Yeah, I just noticed these are all signed by Wagner. Almost every issue in this box, or at least like half of them. So this entire War Child run, which I couldn't tell you what the interior story of this is, but it's this cover image was one of those images that I had etched in my brain. I can't really tell you why. I don't even really love it now. But I think it was just like, it's future Grendel. So he's got a cool leather suit on now. It's not the one piece kind of leotard. He'll pull up his mouth so he looks extra cool when his mouth is exposed. He's got a fucking lightsaber. So that was kind of when he's fighting this giant gorilla. This whole War Child, it's a 10-issue miniseries, and all of the covers are done by Simon Beasley. And these covers these are some of the best Grendel covers I think that have ever been done. So I'll just
Yeah, no, let's run through them. I mean, because the thing is, that cover you just showed for the first issue is the cover of the Grendel Omniverse Volume 4, which has literally just come out a couple of months ago from Dark Horse, where they've collected the whole run in 4 books. Oh my God, look at those covers, man.
Yeah, so these are all just gorgeous paintings by Beasley. And I'm going to actually have to go back and reread this War Child miniseries because I can't even really tell you what it's about. The cover just was, and so that was I have a couple. This is like my biggest complete set.
Right.
Would be Grendel.
So I've never actually read Grendel. I've been waiting for those 4 trades. Because did you get Grendel Tales as well? Have you got those?
Again, I have everything up until a couple of years ago. So
so it is. Yeah. So
it's a full short box full of singles.
I've only got those ones, and they're like really small versions.
They're like a little digest or something.
Yeah, I think they're really sweet. They're like quite a nice size. But I've not read them yet, and I've been wanting to get the whole thing because people really sing its praises.
I think the early stuff is like not its strongest. Like the first couple. I mean, because also like I think when Matt Wagner was doing it, like in the 80s, late 80s, like he was like 20. It's like his first book. A lot of the other artists on it, like the Panda Brothers and stuff, those early books. So I think the writing is a little undercooked, and then the art is a little, a
little shaky here and there. Right?
Shaky. So I think the first like 1 or 2 or even 3 miniseries are kind of like, you have to kind of get past those before it like starts to get good. Again, I haven't even finished it myself. So it's like 8 or 9 or 10 miniseries over 2-3 decades.
Yeah, because I think, is it Odyssey that it ends on, or is it Odyssey? I can't remember. I think that's the space one.
I'd have to go look. Yeah,
I'm not 100%.
Yeah, but again, I haven't finished it, so I don't know if somehow everything loops back in on itself. But at least the first 4 or 5 miniseries that I read, are seemingly totally disconnected from each other,
Right.
other than the idea that there's a Grendel in that timeline or that period. And the Grendel is always just the mask, but also like Grendel as a character changes with each miniseries. Like sometimes he's the bad guy, sometimes he's the good guy. It's always a little bit different. Sometimes he's a she, and it's just always a different Grendel, which is cool, but it also makes it hard to latch on to any single Grendel. If you like this one, you're only going to get 4 or 6 issues with him. So
yeah.
There's the central like antagonist of Grendel is like a werewolf, who's like a super rich like guy in a wheelchair. So it's just kind of a weird, bizarre story, but super cool mask, great design. Grendel always looks cool, and so again, as a kid, like just the character of Grendel was so attractive to me, and I had to go pick that stuff up. So that's that one.
So why don't we move on to your holy grail, or a precious item that you've tracked down?
So this was this might be the book that I've actually owned the longest of like all the books I have. I think I was maybe, I don't know, 9 or 10 years old, at that same Walden's book that I would go to the spinner racks at and get all my comics. I was there, and they had this book, the Marvel, I don't even know what you call it. It's just called Marvel. 5 Fabulous Decades of Marvel. It's this big hardcover book. It has like all the characters, history of each character. And so this for me was just like the greatest overview of all of Marvel. I mean, everything they had, you could see the early iterations of Captain America through the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Like, this book covers the first 50 years, and you get info on the characters, the books themselves, and so this was just like the greatest thing in the world. But the reason it's a holy grail for me is because I didn't actually get it the day that I saw it at that Walden Books. And for days, weeks, I can't remember how long, I just kept telling my dad, I need to get that book. And this book is, let's see, buying like a $1 comic is a lot different than buying what is this? There's no price on it. But, this is not a single floppy issue. This was probably 30 or 40 bucks, 50 bucks. And that, this was not a book I could get that day. And so for weeks, I just kept talking about it. And my dad, it got to a point, I don't know if it was my birthday or I had a bad day and my dad wanted to do something nice for me, but he was like, let's go get you that book that you can't stop talking about. And so we went back to the Walden's Books to get it, and it was sold out. They didn't have it. And I was like so crushed because, all I had wanted was this book. And after weeks of talking about it endlessly, he was like, okay, let's just go get you this book. And they didn't have it. And so we ended up driving around to 4 or 5 other Walden's Books. And then we had to drive for an hour to some bookstore, in the neighboring city. And they had one copy of it. And it took all night. We were like, we went there after school one day and we didn't come back until 9, 10 o'clock at night when the bookstore was closing. We got in there just in time. And so I finally got it. And, I guess it became, definitely at the time it was like my most precious thing, and I'm actually impressed in how good a shape it's in after all these years. Because it's still, the binding's strong and nothing's torn on it. So, once in a while, I'll see these pop up, on eBay or at a vintage store or something, and brings back the memories for sure.
I don't know what they go for, but I had that book, and I had a very similar experience. Funny enough, I desperately wanted it. I was buying single issues at the time. It must have been, I don't know when it came out. What year did it come out? Does it say on it?
Let's see. Yeah, let's see.
Because if it's 50 years and they're going from like 1941, maybe it's like 1991.
91.
There we go.
Yeah.
Wow. Because, I think it marks from the beginning of Marvel Comics #1, basically, doesn't it? Which was 1941. I remember, funny enough, just before you showed that book and I saw the back of it, just the top strip, I literally just went, because I haven't seen it in so long, because I sold it. I sold my copy, and I've regretted it ever since. And it's one of those things where I'm going like, I don't really need it now. And I kind of miss it because that book was so familiar to me. I used to look at it all the time, and it was in really good condition because like the pages are quite nice, thick pages, and it's really nicely put together. The binding's really nice, and it went through all the like it did it by age, doesn't it? Because it's like the Bronze Age, the Silver Age, and it breaks it up in that way that people don't really use those terms so much anymore. I don't know if they really mean the same anymore. But it's how all those characters came about and other mediums they've appeared in, and so you're getting a real history over those first 50 years. They could probably do like a follow-up now.
Yeah, I mean it's been over 30 years since this one, so it's a lot more stuff to add to it. But this is a fantastic book. Both just for the breadth that it covers, but also the detail. I mean, it's really dense with a lot. I think you get a lot more out of this book than most history books or whatever you'll pick up. So.
Yeah. Do you find that was one of the things that maybe, because I know you said you've got an interest in like the business side of it and the kind of behind the scenes side of things with comics. Do you think this is a marker of that for you, or maybe where this began?
No, I mean I think my business stuff is more now current, now that I'm my own small business with my books and having to figure out marketing and how to calculate royalties and book sales and all that. So the business stuff is a recent discovery for me and a necessity, as it's making a comic is hard enough. Putting one out is even harder, especially an indie book when you don't have really any support. I mean, whether it's Crom and I or Robert and I with Collier Birdking, we're essentially it. Like we create the book ourselves, we market the book ourselves, we try to do as much promo as we can, and we really are on our own. And there's thousands of other teams like us who are all on their own, and everyone's competing. And so figuring out the business and distribution side of comics is just a necessity, and it's really hard because where do you even market a comic? Like even something like Batman, unless you're looking at another DC comic, you're not going to see ads anywhere for anything. So comics it's really tough. And like you found Collie just right, you just came across it, the cover just popped, and so
it was online. And that was the thing, the cover stood out.
Yeah, and we put a lot of thought, and we did a couple different covers, and we ended up kind of deciding on doing that very simple, just kind of stoic single figure image, because we knew the book was going to be extra tall because of its oversized format, and so the whole idea was to create a cover that would stand out across the shop. So if you walk into a store, we wanted Collie to tower over all the other books on the shelf and really stand out with a very simple graphic, image. Like there's no background, there's no noise, it's just her, and she's extra tall because of the format. And so I loved walking into stores and seeing her lined up with all the other normal trades and even oversized trades, and she was still the biggest book on the shelf. And I think she does pop out, and that's one of the only ways we can really garner attention or get people's attention is in the hopes that they walk into the shop and they see it sitting there, because again, we have no other outlet to really market it or do it. Like it's a brand new IP, it has no pre-existing knowledge, so it's our only chance was catching people's attention with the cover, and it worked for you, and I've heard it from other people. So, I know that the hard part now is like, how do you keep a book in people's attention? Like, it's great you get the initial buzz and whatnot, but then there's 50 new books every week. And
there are a lot.
Really tough.
There are a lot. It's funny because one of the things that people have said when we've talked about what I've always considered to be indie books, which will be stuff from Dark Horse and Image and Oni and whoever else, is that a lot of creators will say that's not an indie book. It's not an indie book because it's through a publisher. But I think it kind of undermines the amount of work that creators have to put in, how much of their time and money goes into trying to promote it, because you don't necessarily, it depends on which publisher you're with, I think, but you don't necessarily get that push.
Oh, you
because
get
how do
nothing.
you do it? I mean, the only time I remember seeing comics advertised as a kid was on, I think it was like adverts for GI Joe toys, or it was Action Force
Uh-huh.
over here. So you'd see like read the adventures of Action Force every week in the, you know,
Oh no, we didn't.
that
That
was
was not
it.
here. No,
Oh
here in the
really?
U.S., you would only see commercials for toys. All GI Joe, Transformers, all of Ninja Turtles, the ads were always for toys,
Ah,
always for merchandise. They were never for comics, and and even the cartoons themselves are essentially ads for the toys.
yeah, this is true.
And so there is no equivalent to that for comics, especially not today. And I mean, to your point about the indie thing, it's like most books not at the big two are going to be built, developed and built and executed on the backs of the creators.
Yeah,
Most of them aren't getting paid up front. If they are, it's minuscule. And so indie books really are, most of them are labors of love. And it's really the only way to justify doing it, because there's no money in it, and there's nothing else. So the only reason to do it is because you have a passion to do it and you want to,
yes,
which is great because it keeps it pure. And I think that's why comics is as pure a space as it is, as opposed to Netflix and TV and movies, which are all totally dominated by corporate interests.
yeah,
And you'll never get a filmmaker to have the freedom that a comic book creator has in creating what they want. I think the stuff that maybe people are giving you shit about for calling it indie, maybe they call that stuff like zines. It's kind of self-printed,
yeah.
self-distributed stuff. I mean, that to me would be a zine. But this is just kind of a semantic argument at the end of the day.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. I think, like, everyone's got their own take on it and everything. But I think the thing that really interested me as well was in terms of that thought that went into the production of Carly, the fact that you even got them to agree to do it. And I don't know what you did to agree to get them in that format. I don't want to know. Maybe I shouldn't know. But that format is normally that's normally the library edition format, which is for stuff that's been around and it's a proven IP. Normally, like, you'll get Hellboy. Hellboy is available in that format. It's oversized. This was new, and again, that was the other.
But isn't Collie bigger?
No, it's the same size.
Oh, it's the same size. Okay.
Yeah, but it's like, it's for a new book to be that size, so it's an all new story, is really really unusual. And that was I think that's what spoke to me as well about it. It's like seeing it come out that big, brand new. I'm here, take notice, and it worked. And I've seen it on the shelf with a load of new books where people take photos in bookshops, and it's exactly what you said. It just stands out, towers above.
Yeah, like even if you put books in front of it, you could still see the Collie logo on her jacket, and her head there. So like even that was kind of worked into it.
That's smart.
But yeah, I mean, as far as the format goes, I mean, so for the 7 years that Robert and I were working on this book, no one knew about it. We didn't show it to anybody. It was just Robert and I's secret little project that we would get, work on when we could, or I should say he would work on when he could. And because he's a art director at a big video game company. He's full-time job. Comics for him are pure hobby.
Yeah.
And so he would work on it nights and weekends on his holidays from work. And so that's why it took so long. But we were, I don't know, 70-80% done with the whole thing before we showed it to anybody. And so when I showed the book to Dark Horse, it was practically complete. We had, I think, maybe 20 pages left to go. And they, jumped on it immediately. It said, we would love to publish this. And I just simply asked, I said, Robert and I have always looked at this project as like a kind of like a blockbuster, like a CinemaScope. Like, you go back to like the 70s, you'd have movies that come out in special extra large format. Today would be like coming out in IMAX or something, like a 70 millimeter. It's extra big. And I just asked if we could print it in an oversized hardcover because we wanted the art to sing as loud as it could, right? And it's such a visual story that you could kind of get absorbed into the art, and the size of the book would help, with that absorption. And they said, yeah, great. And I didn't even realize how big it was going to. I thought it would be the normal, just hard, the slightly bigger, oversized hardcover.
Yeah.
I had no clue that they were going to publish it in
really?
this extra large format until it showed up on my door, and I said, holy shit, this thing is huge. So it was even bigger than I had hoped, and I was blown away. And so, yeah, it's awesome.
Because, yeah, that's it. I mean, like, this is the standard for original Dark Horse book, and that's notable. Oh, you can't really see. Hang on. There you go. It's a notable size difference.
Yeah, it's like over 2 inches.
Yeah,
so.
And those 2 inches count.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful book, and I literally haven't stopped talking about it. I've even had a chat with. I was talking to funnily enough, Oversized Books. There's another one, a Dark Horse one. It's by Warwick Johnson Cabwell, who did some stuff with Mike Mignola recently, and I was chatting to him at a con last weekend, and I was talking about Dark Horse producing this stuff, and next thing you know, I'm talking about Carly again. I'm thinking, like, I keep talking about Carly. It's literally
dude,
in my head.
Don't stop talking about it. You're like one of the best ads we have out there.
I'll take a check.
Yeah. Well, as soon as we'll get there.
That's good. But yeah, it's just funny. It's like when something sinks into you that much, and you literally can't stop. Like everyone I'm talking to about this book, 'cause it's really.
But have any of the people you're talking to about it heard of it?
Some have heard of it. Some have. When I describe the cover, they reckon that you can see that it's in their minds. And some haven't heard of it yet, but they're intrigued because I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because I'm selling it right. Maybe it's just because it just feels like something different, and that's the thing. To me, it stood out as something really different, and that's what always sells it to me. Like you say, like that. Fewer people working on a comic and producing a comic generally means there are less people influencing it for their own agenda, essentially, and you get a purer product, and that's it. That's what excites me about this book. It's something that does feel really pure, and it feels like 2 people have worked their asses off on it.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what it is. But yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how to get more people to know about it. That's the ongoing struggle for any creator, is how do you find new readers?
Yeah, it's tough.
And so it's an ongoing struggle.
We'll win the war, dude. We'll win the war.
Yeah,
somehow.
We'll get there. Yeah. Should we move on to the next one?
Let's move on. So we're going to take a look at a guilty pleasure next.
Okay. So this is another one of those books from my childhood. This is probably my favorite single issue, at least from my childhood. I still actually really like it. I went and found this copy on, I don't remember if I found it in a pull box or eBay or whatever, but a year or two ago. But it's Punisher War Journal. What is it? Issue 50.
Yeah. And
I've always loved this cover. Punisher is probably my favorite character growing up. Again, sex and violence was my bag. And this book it's interesting because it has
it's embossed, isn't it?
Yeah, it's embossed cover, thick paper, and it's actually, I think it's 3 short stories in here.
Oh.
And let's see, the one that I really like is Trespassers, and it's Unfriendly Skies, written by Chuck Dixon and drawn by, or at least pencils by Mark Texiera.
Oh yeah.
And then I think inks by Richard Starkings. And it's this
Is that on a plane?
Yeah, it's the one on the plane.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He just kind of has like this Steven Seagal vibe in this,
the
way he's drawn. He's got a ponytail. And he's out of the costume. Like he still has the skull, but like he's in like just jeans and a leather vest with ripped off sleeves and a ponytail. I don't think Frank's ever looked cooler than this person. And yeah, he's flying across country, so he's like, in his civilian dress, which is ridiculous that you would show up to the airport in a looking like that.
That's not going to raise any flags, right?
Yeah, the whole conceit is that he doesn't have any weapons because he's in an airport. And so on the plane, it gets taken over by terrorists, which, probably couldn't do that today. But and then, he just just systematically kills them one by one on the plane. You know, it's kind of like an Under Siege or meets Die Hard 2 situation, and it's just it's interesting because like it's incredibly violent and gory, but all the blood is just black.
Oh yeah, they'd make it all black so that they could get away with it. The knife, is that the one where basically I think one of the terrorists stab him in the leg or something with a knife, and then they let go of it, and he basically says like it's something like rule 1 of stabbing someone with a knife is like, don't let go of it, like it's basically just giving me a weapon, and it's all so gritty and grim, like, thanks, you've just given me a weapon.
I want to see it.
I think it's that one.
Well, yeah, right here. This guy stabs him with this knife, and then he pulls it out on the next up here, and that's where he gets his knife for the issue, and that's basically the only weapon he has for I think the whole thing. So for whatever reason, this story just did it for me as a kid. I never forgot it. I think Chuck Dixon did some of the best Punisher stuff. Him and I actually really liked the Garfinis run with Punisher that he did like in the 2000s.
Yeah, that was so good.
That was probably like the last like Marvel stuff I actually really read all the way through. But just look at fucking Frank here. He just looks like a monster.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? When you look back and you go, why did I buy into this? But like, it was so cool.
Yeah, you wonder like a 10-year-old boy looking at this and being like, that's what a man looks like, and that's my image of what I want to grow up. Exactly. Exactly. So this is my guilty pleasure. I'm not saying it's like great, but I just this is probably my favorite issue. Oh, this is interesting. It has a preview for Punisher 2099 in it. So that must have just been coming out.
Yeah, that must be like
90. See, this is not a cool looking Frank.
No.
2099 Punisher is lame.
I didn't really get into him. I think I tried like 2 issues and went, you know what, I'm not digging this.
Yeah. I like a dirty street Frank.
Yeah.
In retrospect, I can see how it's slightly problematic for a 10-year-old to be like idolizing just a straight up murderer.
Yeah.
But he was just the coolest guy in the world to me. I mean, again, the skull, guns, the violence. I mean, that was just where for better or worse, that's what I was into. And I mean, I think that you can see probably the through line from something like that into something like Holly.
Yeah.
Where, maybe I over-enjoy those things.
There's no such thing as over-enjoying that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Man.
But so that's my guilty pleasure is Punisher War Journal issue 50.
That is a nice surprise choice. I'm loving it. Brings back memories. So let's finish up then on something that you highly recommend.
Okay, so I actually have 2, which is maybe cheating, but I wanted to recommend both these books. So first up is Orc Stain by James Stokoe. He just did Orphan of the Five Beasts.
Orphan of the Five Beasts, yeah.
Which I think, very similar to this book, will only ever be 5 issues and will not continue because, unfortunately, it doesn't seem like this stuff sells well enough for him to keep going. But I think James is like one of the most interesting, fun artists working today. He did some of the Alien stuff, one of the Alien books, and
he's done some Godzilla, yeah.
Yeah. So Orc Stain is from, I don't know, early 2000s, mid 2000s. The oddies is like, let's see.
It's quite thick.
Yeah, it's 5 issues, but 2010.
2010, okay.
And so he did everything, like Maria Lovett. James Stokoe created, wrote, drew, lettered, colored. He did the whole book by himself. And this is just a gonzo fantasy story it basically all takes place in like the orc world. And the currency of the orcs is that they'll sever another orc's penis, dry it out, and chop it into coins. And it's just full of like, hold on, there's a whole illustration of how they conduct this.
You can tell that wasn't what I was expecting that to be, right?
Yeah, so here you can see how you make the money with the
no way. What the hell? Oh man.
And
Okay.
and so
What did
again,
they
you
call
know,
that? The
it's
grunch.
yeah, the grunch, yeah. But yeah, they chopped the wiener into coins, and that's the money of the orc world. But it's just full of weird, funny, ridiculous Gonzo stuff. I mean, so many giant page spreads that are just gorgeous. The detail. I'm kind of like enamored by artists who can do this level
Yeah, that's
of detail.
ridiculous.
And um,
Is that all dialogue running down the page on one side, or is that just something
it's
else?
like sound effects. Like
Ah,
this guy's like, I guess he's dancing around or something. Um, but yeah, super weird, super gonzo, um, violent, and just super fun. And yeah, I'm trying to find another spread here. But again, only 5 issues, one book. I don't even know if this is still in print. It's from Image, 2010. I think it's one of James's earlier works. So, but highly recommend this. His new book, Orphan of the Five Beasts, was good, but I think this was superior.
ah. Because that's the thing. I think like I've seen some of his stuff floating around, and I've never
Uh-huh.
picked any up yet. I think I've got his Alien story, and it's collected recently in Aliens Omnibus, but I haven't. I need to read it. But I think they're also going to re-release his Godzilla in like a massive format. I don't know if it'll
Yeah.
rival one of yours, but like it's going to come out in a huge format apparently soon, because like apparently it's good stuff. So I
Yeah.
really want to try it out.
Yeah, I mean, him and Maria Lovett are both people I'd love to work with one day. I think they mostly seem to do a lot of their own stuff, so who knows? But definitely recommend both those books. Oh, and then
Oh
my
yeah,
last book, my
your
dual
bonus.
recommendation. This one's a little more esoteric, I guess, and
Okay.
in out there. So I wanted to pair it with Orkstain to have something to kind of balance it out. But IDW, the past couple of years, has been reprinting these. They're not French; they're like Belgian or something. These guys, they've been working together for 30 or 40 years. Shootin' and Peters, and so this is one of their books, Samaras, and IDW's been putting out their work. They've got like 7 or 8 of these kind of one-off trades, oversized, and just the art is just.
Wow.
These guys, they write and draw together, I believe.
That's kind of a Mobius style.
Yeah, yeah, very much in the French school.
Yeah.
And these stories are just, they're bizarre, they're weird, they're esoteric, but they're not. There's no action, there's no fighting. They're purely like intellectual conundrums, and like they're just about weird, peculiar, unexplainable events happening in these fictional worlds. Like this story is about. Let's see if there's a little intro here. I'll read you the thing. Against the urging of his friends and his lover, Franz, a young officer in the Zistos government, is sent on a mission to the remote and elusive city of Samaras to investigate the disappearance of several of his colleagues. After weeks of travel, Franz reaches Samaras to find a practically deserted city of enveloping and deceptive architecture. He is immediately bewitched by a mysterious young woman, drawing the suspicion of the other residents. Can Franz escape the impending doom of the sprawling metropolis? So it's like this guy gets sent to this city to find out what happened to all the other guys that were sent to this city, and like the city is like alive, like
What?
in this kind of like weird, like it's constantly changing and moving and shifting, and there's like all these giant like girders that are constantly kind of like eating each other, and like the city,
Oh.
if you turn around, like if you walk down the street and you turn around, it'll be different. It'll all have been changed, and it's just again, nothing else really happens except him getting lost, and like, but it's just gorgeous, and it sucks you in, and it's super heady, and I've read 4 or 5 of their books now. I think they have. It says right here.
You said there was 7.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They have 9.
Oh.
At least IDW is going to release all 9 of these.
So is that, does it end at 9, do you know, or is it
Well, they're not
still
connected.
going? Oh, they're not connected
So they're
at all?
9. Yeah, they're just 9 separate stories. This one is published in Europe in '83.
Oh, wow.
and originally came out in the U.S. in '87 from a publisher called NBM, which I've never heard of.
Me either.
And so this is the first time they're being reprinted in English. And it says that all 9 of them should be out by 2020, so they should all be out by now. Wow. I know IDW was just basically went out of business, but
no, I think they're kind of coming back by the sound of it. I think
are they?
Yeah, it wasn't looking good for a bit, but it sounds like they're kind of getting back on their feet or something. Yeah,
yeah, I know their stock of whatever dropped down to like nothing. And
wow, I think losing the Hasbro license did a bit of a number because that stuff was so good, and their GI Joe for the first few years in particular. That was Chuck Dixon. Did their GI Joe stuff, and if you are even remotely into GI Joe or even not, but you love Chuck Dixon's stuff, like I think that's his best writing, certainly that I've ever tried out. But it's his GI Joe was fantastic for IDW.
My favorite Chuck Dixon book is I think Winterworld. You know Winterworld?
Winterworld? No, I don't know that one.
It was like 3 or 4 issue miniseries he did. It's just one book now, but it's like a frozen post-apocalyptic story from Dixon. Super cool. The art in it is like fantastic. Oh, it's Jorge Savino. He's like one of the best. Check out Winterworld. Look up Winterworld.
I will. I'm going to have to check that out. No, that's great. This episode now is going to cost me a fortune because I need to buy all those Samaras books. Have I got the name?
Yeah, so they're all different titles. They're all kind of under the Obscure Cities is the overarching title, and then each book is its own title. Like I've read Theory of a Grain of Sand. I read The Tower. The Tower was really cool. I recommend The Tower or Samaras.
Okay.
But yeah, the Obscure Cities. These are like $20, so they're not too bad. But yeah, those are really, really cool. Super different, unique, unlike anything else you'll find in America. That's for sure.
Right. And it sounds like as well you wanted to finish the episode on maybe showing your softer side, something that's not quite as bloodstained.
yeah, it's not all sex and violence, just extreme violence. Yeah, these books were definitely a surprise to me. I mean, I picked them up because I thought the art was really beautiful, and they kind of really surprised me and sucked me in. One of the other, I don't have a full set, otherwise I probably would have chosen it as my set, but I bought a lot of like 45 issues of Chevelle Noir. Do you remember Chevelle Noir? It was Dark Horse, early 90s Dark Horse book that brought European comics to the US. So it was like one of the first places Mobius was published. Right. And it's all black and white, no color. And each issue would have 3 or 4 stories or a piece of a story. And they were all European stories. And it was like Dark Horse's their first attempt to bring the European comics to the U.S. And so, yeah, you'll find a lot of the early Mobius stuff in there, as well as a bunch, just tons. I mean, every book had great stuff in it. But that was one of the other places that I found these guys, Shooten and Peters. What are their full names? What are their full names? Oh, Benoit Peters and Francois Shooten. Switzerland. They're Swiss.
Ah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know of any other Swiss comic creators.
I don't know if comics are big in Switzerland or what.
Yeah, I mean,
it's worth looking into.
Yeah, there's photos of these guys like having gallery exhibits and stuff. So with sculptures, and they think they're probably kind of fine art. Any artist in Europe is treated with dignity and respect, unlike here in the States.
Yeah, they're not much better in England, to be fair.
Yeah, I was just in France because Raiders came out in French.
Oh, cool.
And, dude, the French experience is just nothing compares to it here in the States. Like, I've never been treated like more revered. Like it was weird, but it was so flattering, and like people were like telling me how bad. I would tell them what it's like in the U.S. and like blah blah blah, and they would be like they would put their hands on my shoulder and like shake their heads and they'd apologize for like how horrible everything was. It was like, well, thank you, but it was great. And I don't know about UK as much, but definitely like in France, and I think less so in Italy. But just comics in Europe are a totally different
Yeah.
thing than they are here. It's a respected art form that everybody from babies to old people enjoy. There's all kinds of stories, biographies, history, drama, comedy, and at least here it's like primarily superheroes and action adventure stuff, which is what I do as well. But it's nice to see those French comic shops with just so many beautiful looking books of all different kinds. It's just, I really, really wish and hope that the medium can grow. So you don't read a lot of single issues? You read mostly in trade?
It's too expensive to read single issues. Like over here, it's like £5 a comic, and it used to be 50p a comic when I first started, like 1989. It's just so expensive, and you're just buying adverts. Like half of it's adverts.
Yeah.
Like, why would you do it when you can have? I mean, I had 50 long boxes, and I would move house quite a lot. So you've got to drag 50 long boxes with you everywhere, and they look crap. They're just these big chunky cardboard boxes. So why would you have that? So now I've got, like, this is only a small part. There's just tons and tons of books in here, and you can see the spines. And I love when people walk in and they just go, whoa. And it's like, if they're not comic readers most of the time. I don't know many comic readers.
I haven't bought a single issue in years. Birdking, Collie, all of it, just we don't even bother with the floppies because there's different reasons. But the economics of doing floppies is getting harder and harder to reason.
It's a weird thing, I think, because especially if they release singles as floppies, you've also got them as digital. Then you've got them as a trade when that's collected, and that trade is also in digital. And then you collect those trades, a few of them, as a hardcover, which is also in digital. How many formats is that? It's confusing. It's there's so much to have to know, and that's when people just go, you know what? I'm not sure I can deal with this. And that's on a standard series, never mind one of the big series where the stories jump between titles from like a Marvel or DC published.
Right, you have to buy 16 different books to get one story. Yeah.
So I loved all that as a kid, but it's I can't imagine getting into it now. I wouldn't have the patience.
It seems like, I know it's divisive within the comic space, but there are single issue readers, and then I think most people are trade waiters, and I know I read mostly everything in trade, and I don't really romanticize the floppy the way that some older creators I've seen do. And I don't know. I don't think I would mourn the loss of the floppy personally.
I still like the chapterized element, to be honest, because I love the idea of there being multiple covers and you get those lovely pieces of art. But even if they're just separating the pages, I don't know if they'd actually pay people to do that, though. Like, every 22 pages, we're going to do a really expensive piece of... they're probably not going to do that, but I think I'd miss that part of it. Knowing where a good place to stop is for... so you can go to sleep, maybe, or eat. But otherwise, I'm finding, the bigger collections... It's just nice. You can really get into it. The idea of getting a 22-page one-shot comic just seems weird to me.
Yeah, it's not a lot of time or space to tell a story, and even if you're just getting a piece of a story, it's too small of a piece. So I find floppies frustrating as a reading experience. I get the variant cover thing. It's nice to have 8 covers and be able to sell 8 copies of the same book, and it's a nice it's a total marketing scheme. Variant cover thing, but we'll see how long that lasts. But my whole thing is trying to put out a great physical book. So case in point, Collie, and
you've succeeded. In terms of future stuff, we obviously talked about the fact that Birdking Volume 2 is out in November. Is there anything else coming up from Daniel Freedman?
So Birdking Volume 2 in November. Every November for the next 3 years there'll be a Birdking, as long as we can, hit our schedule. And otherwise, I do have something else in the works that it's not announced yet. And all I'll say is that it has a collection of artists from all around the world, and which it gave me the opportunity to just work with all these different people.
Oh, nice.
And really excited about that, but I'm just kind of holding it close to the chest until it's done. I just, for whatever reason, I like to finish something before I even talk about it to anybody else. It's just part of my process, I guess.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It also shields me from having any influence or,
yeah,
you know, whether it's influence or someone just saying, "Oh, that sucks," you know, and then me going home and having that sit in the back of my head as I'm trying to work on it. It's just easier for me to do it all kind of in a vacuum, in secret.
It's like telling someone what you're going to name your child, and then like before they're born, and then just hear people taking the piss out of the name. I do that a lot. Yeah, don't do it. It's not worth it.
But yeah, Birdking is the big thing right now, and this other project will pop up probably next year. And Robert and I are starting work on something new. I can't tell you how long it's going to take.
Another 7 years.
We'll see. He says he's very committed to it not taking 7 years.
Okay.
So I'm hoping like 3 to 4 years. We'll see. We'll see.
Don't build me up here, dude.
Yeah, it's that one. We're just getting into it, and I couldn't be more excited to work with Robert again. So it's in the works. It'll be a while. There's nothing to say yet, but it's coming.
I'm looking forward to it already, and I don't even know what it is. Yeah. I mean, Carly's close to my heart. Birdking is also very close to my heart. I'm really looking forward to anything basically you're putting out. So when you are doing it, let us know.
I definitely will.
Let other people know that it's coming.
Yeah. Oh, you guys will be one of the first to know.
You can say the first. It's fine. It just makes it sound.
The first.
Of course. Yeah. No worries. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on, Daniel. This has been just a really nice chat to see what's obviously inspired you and see where all the blood and gore comes from. We'd love to have you on again, but for now, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thank you. I'll be back.
And we'll leave you to your day.
All right. Cheers.
Thanks for listening, everybody.